Traveling West Virginia with award-winning photojournalist Brad Rice. Sponsored by Walker Creek Farms.
We're standing on Red Ash Island. This was the far end of the community of Red Ash. This was a coal mining town back in the late 1800s to the mid 1900s here in the New River Gorge. There was over 100 towns in New River Gorge, coal towns, railroad towns, even a few lumber towns. They had to fit the towns wherever they could on little pieces of land next to the river. And now this island was a place that the community of Red Ash could use an extra piece of land, you might say. There was a ball field here, they had community gatherings, they had a dance floor, but if you step back a little bit earlier, there is earlier stories to what happened here, and especially relates to the cemetery. In the late 1800s, there was a smallpox epidemic. This island was used as what they called a pest house, and it was a place where they would quarantine people with smallpox. Often they were sent here to either get better from that pandemic or pass away, and then if they did, they would be buried on this island. There's over 200 people buried on this island. Most of the grave markers are honestly difficult to find. When you see stones that are at a kind of 90-degree angle to the ground, those are often grave markers. Gravestone can be very expensive, so some people, the graves were only marked with these upright field stones, like Charlie's family here. This was, you can tell by looking at it that it was all hand done, but they still found a way to honor their family member that was no longer with them. Sometimes they would put metal markers like this one to temporarily mark that grave site. And who knows, we don't know why the permanent marker was never placed here, but there's a couple of these that you can find on the island. But there are some classic traditional markers that you'll see. Some of these are babies or very young children, but then there's a stone of someone that was 40-some years old. Hopefully people will also bear in mind that these are sacred places where people's loved ones and family members and friends are laid to rest. Nature has stepped back in since people have moved away. It's a beautiful forest. It's a mountain stream that they're riding on a raft, or a boat down the river, or hiking on this trail, or biking. History is hidden all over the place. It's fun to see that light in people's eyes when they discover there's a little bit more to the story behind the scenery that they're finding here in the national park.
Traveling West Virginia with award-winning photojournalist Brad Rice.
We're out here today looking for morel mushrooms. It's spring. They're a staple of mountain culture. You go out and look for morels in the spring. You hear them called molly moochers, dryland fish, hickory chickens. I'm trying to think of some others. Some you can't say on TV, so there you go. They are difficult to find. Once you know a few things to look for, you can find them. They have an intense mushroom flavor. There's some simple trees you need to learn, like elm, sycamore, apple, and yellow poplar. Once you learn to look up and identify those trees, then it's time to look down and find some mushrooms. I guess you could say it's like an Easter egg hunt for adults. So what we have is a dying elm. You see the bark peeling off, and here's some leaves off of this elm. They're a serrated leaf. They are coming alternate off the stem, not opposite of each other. So that's a pretty good indication you got an elm there, alternate with that serrated leaf. Dying elm, we go down to the bottom and around the bottom of it, We have morels, and like that one there's a little older, you can tell. He's still good, a little dry. We'll just reconstitute him in some water. Into the basket he goes. Here's a little fresher one. Cut him off, and you can see I got a little bit of the stump, so I'll usually just pull that off, stick it back in the ground there. Okay. And then we got a couple over here. This is a really nice sized one right here. Big as my hand. That's the kind you like to find. It's something the whole family can do. In 2020, we found, or little girl JC found probably the largest morel found in the United States that was reported that year. It was almost weighed a pound, 15, 16 inches tall. Okay, well you got a yellow morel right here down under these May apples. This one probably just really came up last night. Last night we had a 60-degree night with rain, thunderstorms.
And just for the record, I found that one, correct?
Yes, Brad found that. So he's on the board. If you like the store-bought mushrooms for their mushroom flavor, a morel probably is 1,000 times more of that mushroom flavor. And they are worldwide. I mean, morels occur in France and Greece, Italy, throughout the Mediterranean. And if you're just wanting to get out in the spring woods and look at different flowers and plants that are blooming right now, you can find these little guys.
Traveling West Virginia with award-winning photojournalist Brad Rice.
We are looking at a sandstone outcrop that has actually formed a natural bridge. What you're looking at is a textbook example of what we call differential weathering. Rocks do not weather away at the same rate. That's why we call it differential, because different parts of the rocks will weather away faster or slower than other parts. See what that rock looks like on the inside. We break it open, and you can actually see the sand grains in there. You can see the little striations of how that sand was laid down. And it's kind of, you can see it's not real competent. It breaks apart in my hand. Those sand grains fall right apart.
And what does that tell you? Anything particular?
Oh, that tells me that this rock is fairly easily weathered. This layer up here in the upper part of that rock, if you look at it closely, it's more of a conglomerate. It's got a lot of big pebbles in it. Like right there. That's a pretty good sized chunk right there. That's a large piece, and see how that's cemented in, and that. So this section of rock has a bigger grain size to it. When you get down here to that rock that I busted apart there, it was very kind of uniform and very sandy. These grains are sticking together harder, or better, than those grains. And it left this strip of sandstone up here, of resistant sandstone, that just happened to be a little bit harder. So the stuff underneath washes out, weathers away, and leaves this natural bridge here. Geologic time is a little hard to comprehend because it happens over such a vast, long period of time. You know, this wasn't always like this. This took a long, long time for this rock to weather away and to become like this. Even that little drip of water back in there, that's very slowly eroding that rock away. Nature is very patient. It does take a long time, but this is evident of what it can do. So there was a fracture running right where we're standing here. And originally, it was just a little fracture. You wouldn't even have seen it. But it was enough of a crack in that rock to let water get in there. Once water gets in there, then it starts going to town on ripping this rock apart. And in this area, like in West Virginia, in climates like ours, the real culprit is the freezing and thawing cycle. Water gets in there in the wintertime, it freezes. When it freezes, the ice expands, and then when it thaws, it contracts. A little bit of water like that can, over a long period of time, can do a lot of changes to the landscape. It's just evidence of some of the grandeur and the power of nature, of our Earth, of our planet, of the processes that formed our planet and continue to form. I mean, the Earth is very dynamic. It's constantly changing, very slowly because of, in geologic time, but nothing stays the same.
Traveling West Virginia with award-winning photojournalist Brad Rice.
It's a jumping branch. It's located between Shady Spring and Hinton. I'm just a giant grower. I grow everything giant. Back in 2016, my dad grew a big pumpkin, and it wasn't like these, but it was big, and it got me curious. And I tried it with some store-bought seeds. That didn't work out. Found out that you need genetically proven seeds. I started growing giant stuff and kind of took off like a rocket. And then I realized there's a whole plethora of giants that can be grown. I ended up growing the giant butternut at 83 pounds, 1 ounce. I was excited, and everybody else was too, because it only happened in 38 days and their growing time is 75 days. This is a giant rutabaga. The state record was set in 98 at 9 pounds, 6 ounces, and this one was weighed in at 19 pounds, 11 ounces. And the reason why it's in the ground is because you can replant them and they'll take back off growing. You gotta find somebody that is a giant grower of whatever specific item you're looking for to grow. Most of them will sell you seeds, and some of them even give you seeds. So this is a giant sunflower, and that is the world record largest stem.
How many inches we talking?
It's 13 inches round, and I've had growers that's been growing since 2006 tell me they've never seen one that big at all. So these are giant corn, and hopefully it'll be a state record for height, which would be 17 foot. And the ear would be over 16 inches. This is a giant carrot. It's supposed to be a giant long carrot that can get over 3 foot long, but I think it's going to end up being a really heavy carrot as well. So hopefully we'll break the state record that is 3 pounds, 11 ounces.
What are you smiling?
That pumpkin's special because it was named after a little girl named Kenzie who sadly passed away. So I decided to bring it home, set up a display, and let people come and take pictures with it and make a little bit of money. The money that comes off of that pumpkin will end up going to the parents. We face everything from rodents to bugs to pestilence from the air like hail and rain and wind and all kinds of different diseases, disease pressures. I mean, there's anything you could think of plus some is what you got to combat to grow something big like this. It's all about the smiles. It's all about the smiles, because whenever I can see the excitement in your eyes, in your kids, and everybody's just oohing on over it and smiling, then I know I've done my job. I know that I've brought some sort of happiness in this sometimes dark and gloomy world, right? And somebody's like, yeah, that just made my day.